Hello and welcome back to another video on the rest of and another edition of NXT Out of 10. And yeah, of course it is a big episode of NXT this week because we've got the pay-per-view Halloween Havoc coming up this weekend, so we've got last prep for that. And yeah, a lot on this show. And we started things off with the Cullen coming out to the ring. All of the focus was on Tatum Paxley since she's the number one contenders for the women's title and was met with "You Deserve It" chants from the crowd and gave a babyface promo about the crowd standing by her side. She was eventually interrupted by Jane and Fatal Influence. Jane dished out her usual trash talk and promised to defeat Paxley this weekend. Dame tried to step in, but Paxley insisted on handling it herself. She told Jane that she's facing some doubts to champ face and she's going to prove everyone wrong by winning the title. A fight broke out which ended Fallon Henry barely saving Jane from taking Paxley's finisher. A decent segment considering it's the first time Paxley had a promo with her as the focus. It had some moments in it, but overall it felt like this was pretty decent. Before we moved on to Leon Slater versus Stax for the X Division Championship, and Slater came in hot with a flurry of fast-paced moves, but once Stax caught him in the corner, he beat him down. Evans was at ringside to cheer Slater on while Grace was in the corner of Stax. Slater took control with a big dive out of the ring and she went to a break. We returned to see him getting a 2 count before Stax regained control, dropping the champ across the top rope. We haven't seen much of Stax in the ring since his feud with Tony D ended, so it's nice to see him get a chance to work with someone new. Slater, as usual, was impressive with a lot of moves, but still needs a little polish to make them perfect. The first half of this match was decent. The second half was more exciting. Slater accidentally knocked Grace off the apron when she was trying to help Stax cheat, but Evans caught her in the arms. Slater scored the win with 450 to retain the X Division Championship, and after the match Evans and Slater stated they wanted to team up for a tag match, and yeah, it was immediately answered by Mr. Iguana and the Parker, which is going to create an interesting match this weekend. 6 out of 10. First of 2 speed matches saw TNA's Zachary Wentz take on Jasper Troy. He's about twice the size of Wentz. Wentz used his quickness to take control and send Troy out the ring in the first minute. He scored a near fall during the second minute, but that is when his luck ran out. Tony Roy recovered and planted him with a black hole slam for the win. The match barely lasted over 2 minutes. For what it was decent, but no matter how exciting one of the bouts was, the time limit is always going to kind of hurt in the end. So I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. Moving on then to a break, but before that Ava was in the ring with Sol Rucker and Zarya. Rucker was on crutches and said she was injured in a match against Charlotte and Bliss. As a result of that, she's not cleared to defend her North American title. Blake Monroe came out and said she will happily take the title since the champ is unable to defend it. Zarya says she doesn't deserve it and offered to step in and defend the title for Rucker. Ava let the decision up to Rucker, who agreed to let Zarya take her place. Monroe threw a fit until Zarya's planned to shut up. A very predictable segment, unfortunate for Rucker, but hopefully she recovers quickly. Before we moved on to the second speed match, Evolve, Shawn Legacy taking on Axiom. It was fast paced and hard hitting, and they made the most of every second and packed in as much in as they could. Even with a short length, they did a lot to make this entertaining. Didn't have enough time to sell anything properly, but they were given a good job of what they were given. Axiom won, which was just a couple of seconds left on the clock to advance to the finals and will face Troy. Probably a slightly better match, but yeah, on the whole, it's kind of the same complaints about the time limit, really. So I'll give it a 6 out of 10. As we then moved on to Hank and Tank versus OTM. As OTM made their entrance, Hank and Tank attacked. Both men hit suicide dives on opposite sides in the ring to get the match started with Tank and Price. Once they regained their footing, Price and Nima began dominating their opponents. They ended up winning relatively short and dominant performance. This wasn't necessarily a good match, but it made OTM look like a force to be reckoned with. They continued their assault, and Hank and Tank after it was over and put Tank through the announce table. So yeah, I'll give it a 5 out of 10. I think good return for OTM and hope to see them use more. As we then moved on to the final match of the night between Fatal Influence and the Culling, which was set up when Damon Paxley took on Jane and Laney Reid. Paxley wiped Reid from corner to corner before the newcomer hit a clothesline. She quickly tagged out to Jane once Paxley hit her with a knee to the face. The champ knocked Dame out of the apron before hitting a Hurricane Rana. We returned to see Dame and Jane tag in. Dame tried to hit took it to both Reid and Jane at the same time and hit a chokeslam that almost pinned the champ. All 4 women brought good energy to this match. Jane has felt like she's grown so much over the past few years and is a complete performer now. Everything she did, whether on offense or defense, looked great. It might surprise people to hear this, but it ended up being the best match of the night from an entertainment standpoint. Jane was able to get the win for her team by pinning Paxley while Reid and Henley attacked Dame at ringside. After it was over, Paxley ended up taking out all 3 members of Fatal Influence by herself before posing with the NXT title. So yeah, overall I'm going to give her a 6 out of 10. Pretty decent stuff. Contract signing between Williams and Saints clone the show, pretty standard. Both men talk some trash, but Saints definitely had the better of the exchange. Predictably, it broke down to a fight and ended with Williams being put through the table, and that was that for their signing. So yeah, kind of what you'd expect. And yeah, overall, this week's episode helped advance the storyline and set things up for the pay-per-view this weekend, but it wasn't the most memorable show when it came to in-ring action. The two-speed match is unfortunately too short. The women's tag match was one of the highlights of the show, as was Slater and Stack. Sometimes we need to remind ourselves NXT's dev, and yeah, it won't often produce the same quality, but the show still needs to be good enough to entice fans coming back, and yeah, it just kind of feels like it hasn't had that momentum recently. 5 out of 10
for this video. Thanks very much for watching. Remember to like, share, subscribe, follow us on our socials, link in the description below for daily wrestling news, meme and content. Subscribe to our other channels on screen right now, that'd be greatly appreciated. Thanks very much for watching. Peace out.